Hello my friends, it's Julie again from Dragonfly Awakening of Colorado. Last week on Transformation Station, we explored integration, the process of reorganizing your inner world around truth rather than survival, and how that allows you to reclaim your power. For many people, this naturally leads to questions about forgiveness. Not because it's something you're required to do, but because at a certain point, holding on to the past can keep us emotionally and energetically stuck. Today, we're going to talk about forgiveness, what it really means, and how to know where you stand with it. And with the holiday season here, forgiveness is on a lot of people's minds. This time of year can bring family dynamics, old patterns, and unresolved pain back to the surface, often alongside pressure to forgive, reconnect, or smooth things over. If you're feeling conflicted about forgiveness right now, that's very normal, and it's part of why I wanted to talk about this today. What is forgiveness? I think a lot of people get confused about that. When you say, "I forgive you" to someone, using those words doesn't mean the process has magically completed and that person is fully forgiven. Words alone do not equal integration, and saying "I forgive you" is often more about closure for the other person than about what is actually happening inside of you. Generally, when forgiveness enters the conversation, it's because someone has done something that hurt you. It may have been intentional or unintentional. It may have happened once, or it may have been a repeated pattern over the course of your life. Maybe they apologized, maybe they didn't. Maybe they believe they did nothing wrong, or maybe they feel really guilty about it. All of that can exist, and none of it determines whether forgiveness happens. So the real question becomes, why forgive? What are you hoping to achieve? Is it about easing their discomfort, or is it about releasing yourself from the pain their actions created? So let's settle this here. Real forgiveness is about you. It's about you. It's not about satisfying the person who hurt you. When forgiveness genuinely occurs, there is an internal release of emotional and energetic charge. Your nervous system is no longer hijacked by the memory of what happened. Forgiveness is a process, not just a moment in time. It's a process of setting yourself free from the weight of that experience and allowing it to loosen its hold on your inner world. And forgiveness is never required, ever. If you're not ready to let go of what someone did to you, then you're simply not ready, and that's okay. You may get there in time or may not. You do not owe anyone the words, "I forgive you," so that they can move on in peace. I'll say it again. Forgiveness is not about appeasing the person who hurt you. It's not about giving them peace of mind, especially at the expense of your own. Forgiveness does not excuse harm, and it doesn't mean you have to forget what happened. It also doesn't mean that you're ready or willing to reconcile with that person. Forgiveness does not require reconciliation. That is really important to remember, because I think a lot of people think forgiveness and reconciliation go hand in hand. They don't. You never have to speak to someone again if they're not good for you. And forgiveness does not mean you suddenly trust that person again. We also want to be careful about using forgiveness as a form of spiritual bypassing. Spiritual bypassing happens when we try to stay high vibe or spiritually elevated as a way to avoid the very real human healing work that needs to happen. And don't get me wrong, being in a high vibe state can feel amazing and be really good for you at times. But if it's used to bypass anger, grief, or pain, there's usually a crash later, and it is not pleasant. You came here to experience a human life. Spirituality can support you in finding meaning, connection, and perspective, but it cannot remove the lessons you are here to integrate. Forgiveness also does not mean your anger was wrong. Anger is often part of how we protect ourselves and recognize that a line was crossed. When you think about forgiving someone, it's very important to remember that you are the one who should benefit from it. Healing often requires learning to see yourself as a priority. Many of us were taught early on that other people's feelings matter more than our own, and that tending to ourselves is selfish. But that's not selfish. It's self-love. If you don't treat yourself as a priority, who will? No one else has the ability to care for your inner world the way you can. No one else is living inside your head or your heart, so they don't know what you need at every moment. You have to be willing to show up for yourself first. Forgiveness is not something you force yourself into. It happens when you're ready to set down the emotional and energetic weight of the past so it no longer continues to impact you in the present. So again, very important, forgiveness is for you, not for anyone else. So how do you know if you've really forgiven someone? This is where a lot of people get stuck, because forgiveness isn't a decision you make with your mind. It's something your body and nervous system demonstrate over time. Forgiveness doesn't mean the memory disappears, and it doesn't erase the emotions surrounding it. What it usually means is that the emotional charge around the memory begins to soften. The story gets quieter in your mind, and your body doesn't react the same way it used to. One of the clearest signs of forgiveness is that thinking about the person no longer hijacks your nervous system. You don't feel your chest tighten or your stomach drop. You don't feel the urge to defend yourself, explain what happened, or replay conversations in your head. The emotional response may still be there, but it's much less intense and doesn't take over. There may also be a sense of calm or neutrality where there used to be intensity. Another sign is that you no longer need anything from that person. You don't need an apology. You don't need them to understand. You don't need closure or validation. Their opinion of you starts to matter less, and you stop feeling responsible for how they feel. A simple way to check in with yourself is to imagine running into this person unexpectedly. There's no interaction, you're just aware of their presence. Notice what happens in your body. If you feel yourself brace or tense, forgiveness may not be complete yet, and that's okay. If your body stays mostly neutral, you're likely further along than you realize. Forgiveness also happens in layers. You're peeling away at this onion of emotional intensity. You may find that you've forgiven one part of the experience while another part still carries charge. That doesn't mean you failed or that you're starting from square one again. It just means your system is still integrating. Why is forgiveness so hard? Let's start with the big overall reason first. Forgiveness is hard because it often asks the nervous system to let go of something that once kept you safe. I already did an episode on anger, which I'll link on the end screen and in the description, but I'll remind you here that anger is protective. Anger is the part of us that loves us and knows when a boundary has been breached. When you're angry, that's your natural defense kicking in to keep you safe from danger or prevent your boundaries from being violated. So letting go of anger can feel dangerous, like dropping your shield when your nervous system still feels a battle happening. Forgiveness can also feel like self-betrayal, especially when the harm was never acknowledged or repaired. If someone hurt you and never took responsibility, forgiving them can feel like you're minimizing your own experience or abandoning yourself. Another reason forgiveness is hard is that the body remembers even though the mind understands. You can logically know that something is over or that you want to move on and still feel a reaction in your body. That doesn't mean you're doing something wrong. It means your nervous system is still processing. Many people are also pressured to forgive before they're ready. This can come from family expectations, religious teachings, or spiritual culture that treats forgiveness as a requirement for being healed or evolved. When forgiveness is forced, the system often pushes back because real forgiveness can't be rushed. And finally, forgiveness often involves grief. Grief for what should have happened, for what you needed and didn't receive, or for the version of the relationship you hoped for. Grief takes time, and it's one of the reasons forgiveness unfolds slowly and in layers. So if forgiveness feels hard for you, there is nothing wrong with you. It's not a sign that you're stuck or unwilling to heal. It just means that your system is doing its best to protect you and integrate what you've been through. An important thing to remember is, whether you forgive or not, boundaries are still necessary. Forgiveness and boundaries are not opposites. They serve different purposes. Forgiveness is internal and boundaries are external. One does not cancel out the other. Just because you forgive someone doesn't mean your boundaries should go out the window. If anything, the experience may have shown you exactly where stronger boundaries are needed. And again, forgiveness is for you, not for them. You can fully forgive someone and still choose not to let them back into your life. You can fully forgive someone and never speak to them again. If someone isn't good for you, they're simply not good for you. You don't owe anyone access to you, regardless of whether you've forgiven them or not. Again, forgiveness isn't really an action. It's an internal process that happens naturally over time. But it's understandable if you're getting impatient and telling yourself things like, I want to let this go. Why can't I let this go? If I could just forgive them, I would feel so much better. There are signs that forgiveness may be premature. If the person continues to harm you, cross boundaries, manipulate you, abuse you, or dismiss your experience, then trying to force forgiveness at this stage often becomes self-abandonment. If your nervous system isn't convinced that you're safe, real forgiveness is just not going to happen right now. If you're still feeling a lot of anger toward the person or the situation, that usually means anger has not completed its protective role. Trying to forgive at this stage usually backfires. If forgiveness is being pressured by an external force, such as family, religion, spiritual communities, therapy culture, or even the person who caused the harm, it rarely leads to real healing. Forgiveness is part of an internal healing process, and forced forgiveness is not healing. And if grief is still active, forgiveness often needs to wait. You can't skip grief and expect forgiveness to stick. So if forgiveness isn't required, what does it actually give you? Forgiveness doesn't change the past, but it does change how much of your present the past is allowed to occupy. One of the biggest shifts forgiveness brings is reclaimed energy. When the emotional charge softens, you spend less time replaying or reacting to what happened, and that energy comes back to you. The nervous system also begins to settle. There's less bracing, less vigilance, and more ease in daily life. As the charge quiets, people often notice more emotional spaciousness. There's room again for joy, calm, curiosity, and presence without feeling pulled back into the past. Forgiveness also frees you from the story. The experience becomes something that happened, not something that is still happening inside you. You can remember it without reliving it. And finally, forgiveness supports clearer boundaries and deeper self-trust. When the lesson has been integrated, you're less likely to override yourself or ignore what you know. Forgiveness doesn't make you more permissive. It often makes you more discerning, and it allows you to move forward without being dragged by the past. As we close, I want to remind you of something important. You do not owe anyone forgiveness. Forgiveness is not a requirement for healing, and it's not something you force or rush. It unfolds in its own time, when your system is ready. If forgiveness feels far away for you right now, that's okay. You're not doing anything wrong. It simply means there is still integration happening. Anger, grief, and boundaries are not obstacles to healing. They are often part of it. Forgiveness is also not an all or nothing process. You may forgive in layers, or in pieces, or not at all. You may find neutrality long before you find compassion, and neutrality is enough. Often the hardest thing is not forgiving another person, but forgiving ourselves for what we didn't know at the time, for what we tolerated, or for what we needed in order to survive. Even for the harm we've caused that we haven't been forgiven for. That kind of self-forgiveness can create more space than anything else. Wherever you are in this process is okay. You don't need to rush. Your internal timing matters and should be honored. Healing is not about becoming someone else. It's about becoming more at home in yourself. Thank you so much for watching today. I hope this episode was helpful for you. If this time of year brings up a lot for you, I hope you're able to take extra care of yourself. If this helped you, please be sure to like, subscribe, and share it with anyone who might benefit. If you're looking for more support on your healing journey, my husband and I offer energy healing sessions, meditation instruction, consciousness activation sessions, and more. You can visit dragonflyawakening.com to learn more or book a session with us. In the next episode, we'll focus on learning to trust yourself again, especially after everything you've released in this healing process. Until then, please take good care of your beautiful self and keep shining your light. Bye.